Hey, everybody. Welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. I'm your host, Audrey McKeon, and today we are here with Janine. Janine, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Janine, and I'm coming on today to talk about surviving an abusive relationship and just to chat with Adrian.
Yeah. So we were friends in high school, just full disclosure here.
Yeah.
We knew each other from way back. Janine's awesome. And it turns out we had way more in common than we thought we did
Yeah.
in some not so great ways. So we'll see what she brings up around that. But I just want to, full disclosure here. Here's what I'm dealing with right now, what's on my mind. I just got my first 1-star review on my book. And it's one of those things where I knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable, right?
Right.
And everyone tells you, hey, when you finally get haters, you've made it. I always say, if the trolls hate it, you've made it. And it's very true. If nobody was paying attention, then they wouldn't be mad about it. And that your stuff's not going to be for everybody. That.
Mm-hmm.
But it still kind of hurts. It still feels kind of yucky. And it was really they pushed a big shame button. It was very gross. Yeah. So, it's one thing if they say oh, your book sucks. Okay, you didn't like my book. That's fine. But then they kind of went after me in a very personal way. And so that is just oh man. But again, that it's about them and not about you. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there that, everybody gets bad, everybody gets criticism, right? There's no famous person that you can look at and think nobody doesn't like that. That is bullshit. The more popular you get, in fact, the more people feel like they have to, throw rocks at you because the higher you are, the easier target you become. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. That's kind of what's up. But I'm so happy to be here with Janine because it's been a long time and there's a lot that we haven't really unpacked that we have in common. So I think we're about to get into it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we lost touch after high school, but it's now reading your book, I'm realizing how many things we actually both had in common that since then that we didn't talk about.
Exactly.
So
I think those patterns get formed pretty early on, and it takes a lot of courage and bravery to confront them and look at that pain instead of trying to numb it or run away from it. And so it can take a lot of decades to even be willing to talk about this stuff. So thank you for being brave enough to come on here and talk about this.
No, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'll just throw out the first question, which is what I always start with. What story are you not telling?
What story am I not telling? Oh, probably just, I'm not telling, that I'm going to tell.
Yeah, because you told me before we pushed record that your kids don't know this story.
No, my kids don't know this story. My parents don't know this story. My husband knows a little bit, but not all of it. It's just too painful to talk about. And even right now, just thinking about it, I'm feeling a lot of the same feelings I felt when I was actually in the relationship, with the butterflies in your stomach and that nervousness and that adrenaline kind of fight or flight feeling. Mm-hmm. I'm even getting that now just thinking about it. And so I choose not to think about it a lot, but, reading your book has really made me realize that it's good to confront it and it's good to talk about it. And maybe by doing so, help other people who are in similar situations.
And thank you for saying that too, because, I'm in a really vulnerable place right now, like I said, reading that review. And so it's good to remind myself that I didn't write the book just for anyone. I wrote the book for people like you. I wrote the book for people like you so that you would know that you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard, not, to read that and I just hope that maybe somebody out there will listen to this or read your book and then realize that they are in a bad situation and they need to get out before it's too late.
That's right. That's right. So the next question is, where does it begin for you? And I know this can be a hard question to answer because, like I said, these patterns, they can go way back. So I'm just
Yeah,
gonna let you decide where it begins for you.
I think it begins for me with my parents' divorce
Mm-hmm.
happening when I was 12, and then I was raised by my dad for the rest of the time, and my
Same.
mom. Yeah, I know that's something. My mom moved away to Las Vegas, and my brother and my sister were 9 and 10 years younger than me, so they were 2 and 3 years old.
Mhm.
And my dad was very loving, he was present, but he was also very busy with my brother and sister. And so I feel like I didn't get a lot of boundaries put on me,
Right.
and I didn't get a lot of like strong supervision. But my dad was always very supportive. If I needed to talk to him, he was there, and he always
Mhm.
wanted me to know my self-worth. That was very important to him. And so, having him as like a male role model makes me, sad that I ended up in this situation to begin with. But I feel like some of it was a little bit of daddy issues, and I needed, that male presence in my life and to
Mhm.
feel good about myself.
Right.
And yeah, so I think it kind of started there.
Yeah.
Um, because, as we've also realized, there's been, when I was a teenager, I was raped, and and I also felt like it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't end up telling the police or anything because I was at a party and I was drunk, and then I was like, well, you're stupid for being at a party and drunk, and not really putting the blame on him where it should have been. um,
And can I interject here and
uh,
say we recently realized that we were actually raped by the same man. The
yeah,
same man.
yeah, so it's a
So,
pattern for him, which is a
which
problem.
I clearly knew. I mean, he said to me at the time, thank you for being so quiet. Most American girls can be so noisy. So I kind of knew that this was not the first rodeo for him. And that was part of why I did end up filing a report. Fat lot of good that did. Let me tell you, you didn't miss much. They asked me what kind of underpants I was wearing. White cotton Hanes is the answer. So yeah, not super helpful as it turns out. So
Right.
don't beat yourself up too much about not going to the police.
I know. Well, even after that, I mean, I can kind of. So after I became a nurse, I became a sexual assault nurse examiner to try to help people, like that have been raped.
Yep.
And the cops haven't changed. A lot of them were in the same, well, what was she wearing? Can you tell by the exam that she was raped? Can you tell by,
Yeah.
and it was always her fault a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Well, it just seemed like that, and it was very hard to change their opinion on that. Where I'm like,
Of
people
course.
act differently, and yeah, some are falsely accused, but they made it seem like everyone was falsely accusing.
Right.
But
Well,
um,
I just want to say it's really awesome that you decided to do that with your life. That's really awesome. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
hope it helps some people.
Yeah.
um,
So, what would you say is the culmination of this? What was the point in your life where you were like, "Whoa, this has gotten out of hand, this pattern?"
this not until I ended up leaving the,
Mhm.
the relationship, which was when I was 28 years old.
Mhm.
Um, I stayed almost 29. I stayed married for 11 years because I did not want to get divorced again, and I did not want to put my children through what I went through.
Yeah.
And but I think it really just generated from a little bit, like I said, the daddy issues, and then the low self-esteem. I was an easy target um, for somebody, and I felt like I would never be because I was great in school. I was pretty outgoing. I just felt like I had the world on my hand. I could have done anything. I could have gone anywhere. I wanted to be a doctor when I was in high school, and my dad was totally prepared to send me to John Hopkins University, and that was my dream. I wanted to do that, and it all ended up not happening. So the summer between my 10th and 11th grade year, I went to Florida to visit my mom and moved to Florida. I spent a couple of years living in South Florida when I was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some friends there. So I was hanging out with my really good friend, and she had a crush on this guy that was in a band. And then that's how I met Greg. So I met him he was his drummer, and we spent the whole summer together where we were just dating and everything. And at first, of course, he was very charming, very
Oh, they
nice,
always
very
are.
considerate. Yes.
Yeah.
Saw no red flags whatsoever. I ended up, that was like a summer, all summer long in Florida. And then I came to Colorado and I went to school. And then winter break, I went back to Florida in my 11th grade year. We were about to do Oliver. I was
I remember it well.
I was even cast in Oliver, and yeah, so I left and I went to Florida again for my winter break. And while I was there, I kept seeing him. And then I found out my dad just got married, like kind of didn't even meet her. And it was really odd.
Wait, I'm
And
sorry, what?
yeah,
Okay, so he
he just
married
got
someone
married.
that he hadn't met?
I hadn't met her, and
I see.
neither had the children, neither had my brother and sister.
Right.
So he went on a vacation to Ohio to visit his best friend, and he came back with a wife 2 weeks
Wow.
later. It was, it was pretty shocking. And to say the least, we did not get along
Yeah.
because she thought I had too many liberties, because dad let me do whatever I wanted. And
Right.
she really wanted to be really, really, really strict. And I'm like, you can't go backwards when
Yeah, it doesn't
somebody
really
is
work
16,
that way.
17 years old. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that had happened shortly before I went for winter break. And so her and I fought constantly. We just did not get along. And so I decided when I was there that I wanted to stay not only with my boyfriend, but I wanted to stay with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called my dad and I said, I'm transferring to Florida and going to do high school there. I ended up just getting my GED because it was easier.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I was just boyfriend, girlfriend with Greg. And then I saw his jealousy streak come out
His what?
one time. His jealousy.
Oh.
But
Mm-hmm.
it started because I was working at a Harley Davidson shop selling, apparel. And I didn't have a car, and he was late coming to pick me up. So I got a ride home from one of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw this guy dropping me off, he flipped a lid. And he pushed me. He accused me of, sleeping around on him. He was furious.
Yeah.
And I had never seen that side of him before. And I was like, I am not dealing with this.
Yeah.
So I packed up my stuff and I went to my grandmother's house. And then I found out a week later I was pregnant.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was 17.
Yeah. Yeah. And what
And
do you do? Right?
yeah,
What do you
and
do?
I don't believe in abortion.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I feel like it's fine for other people if that's what they choose to do, but I just didn't feel it was a good choice for me.
Right.
So I called my dad and I said, can I come home? Will this work? And he was like, no. He said, I'm not raising a kid. So
Wow.
I kind of felt trapped, and I thought about it for a while, and I went back to Greg and I explained the situation, and I thought, well, maybe, if I tell him that I didn't like his, jealousy, and I won't stand for
Mm-hmm.
that. If that happens again, I'll leave. Maybe he'll take me more seriously.
Right.
Of course, didn't. But by that time, what do I do?
I'm curious though, how did he respond to that? Did he say, yeah, okay, and then just act exactly the same way? Or did he just say, no, I am who I am?
Well, no, he said yes, okay. He was very sorry. It
Right.
was always that honeymoon phase. And he was
Of
sweet
course.
as can be.
Of course.
Yeah, he said, at first too, he wanted me to get an abortion too, and I said no. And then after a while, he decided that, or I think it was his mom that convinced him that he should probably marry me since I was going to have his child.
Right.
I don't think either one of us really wanted to get married, but we were like, oh, it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did,
Funny
yeah.
thing what we do for, our children and thinking that we're doing the right thing for our children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just went on where he would always get a job, but then he'd always get fired because he'd call in sick all the time. So I'm the one who worked.
Yeah.
Um, I decided I was going to go to school and get my nursing degree because kind of the doctor thing was out the window. So
Mhm.
I had my first child, Tiana, and
It's a beautiful
you know,
name.
thank you. Tatiana is her full name, but
Hmm. Also beautiful.
thank you. And so then we went, I was just going part-time to the community college. I was slowly, chipping away, getting my degree, also working full-time as a nursing assistant at the hospital. And it was just, every time I came home, it was, he was just so jealous. It was always accusatory,
Yeah.
what doctor hit on you today? Who were you
Mm.
with today? Who are you sleeping with today?
Right.
Why are you 5 minutes late getting home?
Uh-huh.
Why is this? He would do drive-bys at
Hmm.
my work. And one time when I parked in a different place, he stormed into my work just furious, wanting to know where the heck I was.
Right.
And I was like working in an emergency room at the time. And I'm like, you can't just walk in here. I'm working.
Yeah.
And he never worked. So I supported him fully while I was going to school and raising my daughter. And he never even watched my daughter. She went to I paid
Yeah.
daycare and family to watch her.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know why I put up with it as long as I did, but it was just,
Oh, baby. I know because you've read my book.
oh yeah,
I know. It's one of those things where when you're in it, it's so hard to see the edges of it. And all you can see is I'm going to be the asshole if I'm the one who leaves,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I really didn't want to do that to the children,
Yep.
but
Yep.
I mean, I tried to join the Air Force because I thought if I join the Air Force, then I can have more support for myself and my children, and I have health care, and then I can leave him. And when I went for my physical for the Air Force, I discovered I was pregnant with my second
Oh,
child. So, and it was bad because him and I were both out of work for a little bit while I was trying to get into the Air Force. And so I didn't have money to buy birth control. And then
mm,
that
yeah.
happened because if I did not agree and have sex when he wanted to have sex
Oh, yeah.
and I got it, then it was forceful anyway. So it's
Yep.
like I might as well just comply because it's
Absolutely.
going to happen,
Yeah.
and then it was always the constant verbal abuse of, don't, if you leave me, no one else will want you.
Mm-hmm.
No
Mm-hmm.
one's going to want you with two kids. No one's going to want someone who, is just a nursing assistant. And this is coming from someone who wasn't working,
Yeah.
which is
Exactly.
just
It's rich, right?
just so astounding to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yes,
yeah,
this is all these tactics so familiar, so familiar. And
right.
that, it's like his pleasure means everything, your pleasure means nothing. His pain means everything, your pain means nothing. It
No.
is it is drilled into you until you feel like you are literally just a receptacle for his emotions and his whatever,
Yeah,
you know? Yeah. Yeah.
completely. And I hate to say this, but it got to the point where I thought that maybe if I cheated on him and got caught, like I
Uh-huh.
purposely got caught,
Hmm.
then maybe he would just leave me.
Or kill
And
you. And either way, it's over, right?
yeah, well, yeah, so he didn't just leave me, and of course he apologized, and he begged me to come back, begged me, started being sweet again, started being the man that I loved again. And
Hmm.
then, after a couple short weeks, I got the beating of my life.
Yeah.
I was covered in bruises. I had chunks of my hair pulled out.
Oh,
I should have, I don't know why I did not go to the police. His mom saw it, and because she lived in the same apartment complex we did, and she yelled at him for doing that to me, but and I thought that that was enough for some reason. um, but it got so bad. yeah, I don't know why I just kept staying in, because then I felt like I was the bad one because I did something
Oh yeah.
bad,
Oh
and
yeah.
I did
Yeah.
something to hurt him. I humiliated him.
So now
I
you feel like you deserve it, and
Yeah,
this is your punishment, and you should just take it. Yeah.
right,
Oh yeah. And the thing is,
right.
I totally get it. The thing about like, oh, well, that seemed like enough. It's amazing how you get the Stockholm syndrome where you empathize with him. You empathize with
Mhm.
him, and you feel like I remember, being terrified to call the police because A, he was black, and you know how the police treat black people in this country, and
Yeah,
B, his country was in the middle of a civil war. And I didn't
yeah,
like the idea of him being sent home in the middle of a civil war. And
right.
so I'm taking all of this because I'm like, hey, I've already taken it this long, like obviously I'm strong enough to handle it. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep taking it, rather than put him in danger.
hmm Yeah, I felt the same way. And, I felt like I had hurt him, and he was such a good guy to stay with me,
Mm,
through the fact that, I had cheated on him and all of that. And he was the victim, not me.
right.
Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
I just kept plugging away at school, even though he kept telling me that school was a waste of my time. And he made it very difficult for me to go to college. But I finally got my degree, and I signed on with a hospital to work in the emergency room. I got a sign-on bonus, but I had to do 2 years. And I did 2 years, and a lot of it was working, along all these other very powerful, smart women, very independent, that made
Mhm.
me, they would talk about their home life. And then I'd realize that mine wasn't right. There was something so different with the way they talked about their husbands and I talked about mine.
Yeah.
And it just seemed, we couldn't do anything socially because he didn't have any friends and he didn't get along with people. And his favorite pastime was to talk crap about everyone else. And that was, and he wanted, and would want to isolate me from my family. So he would always talk about what a bad person my mom was, what a bad person my dad was, how stupid my brother and sister were, how
Mhm.
I shouldn't even be around them. So it was he was also very isolating. And it got to
Yeah.
the point where I was like, you know what? No, no, this is my family and I love them and I'm going to spend time with them. And if you don't want to come, then you don't have to come. And it took me a while to get there, but I would started doing that. Started going on, I started going over to my mom's house, who was still living in Florida at the time, and just spending time with her. And he would get mad and I didn't care. And it got to the point where I really didn't care. I'd come home and he would be like, so who are you with today? And I was like, oh, first I started out with the respiratory therapist and it was really nice. And then there was this doctor and he was really hot. So I went ahead and had him do, and, all this. And I was just, bluffing, of course. But it got to the point where I just didn't care. And he would be like,
Yeah.
you don't love me. And then I would say, you know what? You're right. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally, after my 2 years was up, I said, I'm moving back to Colorado because I don't want to raise my two girls here in South Florida because it was a very bad educational system. I mean,
Mhm.
he graduated high school there and didn't even know algebra. It was
Wow.
really bad. It was like not compared to, where we went to school.
Yeah.
I was just like, I want to get them back to Colorado, around my family. My brother and sister were still here, aunts and uncles, cousins.
Mhm.
I wanted that. So he didn't want to move. I just moved. And I was like, I don't care if you come or not. And he
Yeah.
came, and we lasted about one more year here. And like right before we got divorced, we did go on a trip to Amsterdam. It was like my first vacation I had taken in years, but I had been working as a nurse then for about 4 years. So
Mhm.
did that. And while we were there, he was like, I'm going to go to the red light district and I'm going to pick up some. I was like, okay, go ahead. I said, I'm going to the
Fun.
Anne Frank Museum. And he did. And he did. He
Yeah.
went, well, at least he told me he did. And
Yeah.
I don't care. It's
Don't
like,
care. It's
that
like,
was what the point was, is I just did not care.
mhm.
And when I got back, I was like, I really just, I don't care anymore. Like, I don't love him anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I was terrified. I only weighed 90 pounds the entire time I was
Ugh,
married to him because he made me so nervous all the time. It was like
yeah.
walking on eggshells. I never knew when I came home if he was going to be in a good mood or a bad mood.
Yeah.
if I was going to get, yelled at for something I didn't do. It's very frightening. And so I did, I called, it was one night, I was actually watching The Sopranos, and I saw one character, I can't remember her name, but she was in an abusive relationship and they killed her out in the woods. And I was like, I thought to myself, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
If I don't change something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that exact night, I told him that I wanted a divorce, and he had a knife, which I didn't know. He held it to my throat, and he was like, "You are not leaving me. I could kill you right now." And I stayed calm, and I said, "You know what? Go ahead, because it's better than living in this fucking life."
Yeah.
And I was like, "And you'll go to jail forever because you'll be the prime suspect."
That's right.
But I was kind of ready to die at that point. I didn't want to go on living the way I was.
Yeah.
It was weird that I kind of just, I accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was my lack of terror that made him not do it.
Yeah.
I think he realized at that point he didn't have control over me.
That's right.
And so he took the knife away, but he was yelling and he was mad. And I went to call, and he took my cell phone and he threw it against the wall and broke it. He ripped out the landline that I had. So there was no way for me to call the police.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up and I grabbed my girls and I put them in the car, and I started to back out, and he stood behind me, and I just kept going. I pushed him. And I said to him, you better get out of the way or I'll run you over. And, but I did. My car touched him. It kept pushing him and pushing him. And finally he got the idea, and he came around to my window, because I had my window down because I was yelling at him. And he reached in and he grabbed the keys out of the ignition, and I had my pepper spray on me, and I sprayed him with pepper spray.
Good for you. Good for you, Janine.
And I got my keys back, and I went to my dad's house with my girls. And I was like, and I told my dad, that it was bad. And I told him that I was being abused, and I told him that I needed to stay there and I needed help. And, my dad was there for me. He let me stay there. The next day I went back to the house, and I had a police escort, and I got everything, got my stuff out.
Good.
And I called his mom, and because his mom controlled him. So I called his mom, and I was like, I'm getting a divorce, and I want Greg out of the house because I'm going to the courthouse with this. And she did. The next day, she hired a U-Haul, and she had, him, and I forget who she flew out there. I think one of his cousins. She flew one of his cousins to Colorado because she lived in Kentucky. And they cleaned me out, and I didn't care. I said, take whatever you want. I don't care. I'll replace it. I don't care. Take it all.
It's just stuff. Who cares?
Yeah. And he moved out. And and I have to say too, right there at the end, one of the worst things was when he was yelling at me in the kitchen, and he had thrown me down on the floor. And my little Erica, my younger daughter, she was only like 4 or 5 at the time. And she sat on me, and she protected me, and she told him, she was like, don't hurt mommy. And she still remembers that to this day, and I was like, I can't make my girls think that this is okay.
That's right.
And that was another thing that, really gave me the courage to leave.
Yeah. It's such a big thing. But I love that moment when they don't have power over you anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I always describe it. It's like the end of Labyrinth, when she just looks at him and says, you have no power over me.
Yes. Exactly.
It is. It's like this little light bulb that goes off. It's like, oh my God, the only thing that's ever given you power over me was me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I don't have to make that choice.
It's so refreshing. It was so refreshing. And it was shortly after that, I went to our 10-year reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw all these people that I hadn't seen in so long.
Yeah.
And I had such a great time, and I smiled, and I was able to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to flirt with people. I was able to drink because he would not let me drink.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to do all of that, and it felt so liberating. So
Yeah.
liberating. You know, you came to one of my parties shortly after.
That's
I
so
mean,
funny. Like we were in basically the same place and we didn't know it.
no,
Because
we
that
didn't
was
do
almost
it.
the exact same time that I left him and came back for the 10-year high school reunion.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I mean, it just felt so good. And,
Yeah.
and Melissa was there and, Melissa was my best friend.
Yeah.
And she really helped me too. I mean, she really did. It was,
Yeah.
and she like did stuff with me and like got me kind of to go out again and do stuff
Mm-hmm.
again. And and it's just funny. And yeah, and some of our friends like Brett and Danny and just hanging
Mm-hmm.
out with them, and they're like, it's okay to have fun, it's okay to
Yeah.
drink, it's okay to, to go to Rocky Horror Picture Show again, it's okay to
Exactly.
go to do all this, and I was just,
Exactly.
it was, I mean, I felt like I was like a college kid again
Yeah.
because I didn't have that.
Right. Right.
And then
Yeah.
having all the fun, it was just, and then I realized, and even my friends at work, they were like, wow, you are a totally different person. They thought I
Mhm.
was mousy and reserved, and they realized that I am not at all. I am very, outgoing and extroverted and assertive, and now I'm in management. Like it just kind of shows, it totally changed who I was.
Yeah, it
He
does.
totally changed who I was.
It changes your entire personality.
Yeah,
And just being, out of touch with yourself,
yeah.
it affects everything. It affects your health. It affects, the way you interact with everyone, everything. It's a lot.
I
Yeah.
can say, like, when you think about it, if you're in a bad place and you're in a bad relationship and you think, if I leave, I'm going to miss him, but then look back at it and think, but do you miss yourself more?
Right.
If you
Yeah.
can't be yourself,
Mm-hmm. What's the
it's
point?
suffocating.
Yeah,
It's like you're dying.
absolutely. So, what's blocked you from telling this story before?
Oh, I think, the feelings, that the feeling that I was responsible for it. I told some people in the very beginning and they were like, well, why didn't you leave before? Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you,
Mm-hmm.
get a restraining order against them? How could you let your kids be in that situation for as long as you did? And it was just, I still felt bad. And
Yeah.
I felt it was kind of the same way as when you're in the relationship. You still feel like you're responsible
Yeah.
for it.
There's
And
so much shame around it. So much shame.
there
Yeah.
is so much shame. And I think, I'm just now getting to a point where I'm starting to realize that none of it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a very common thing, and not too common for
Yeah.
sure.
Too common.
Um, it's too common, but I've heard enough other people's stories now to know that it's not just me and that I wasn't at fault.
That's right. Yeah. It's a pattern that plays itself out in a lot of different ways in a lot of different relationships. And shame is what keeps us stuck in it. Shame is exactly what keeps us stuck in it. And it's what keeps us silent. And so the more we look at this stuff, talk about this stuff, get it out there, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now both my daughters are in their 20s, so I think that they can hear about it now.
Yeah.
I didn't want to trash their dad when,
Right.
I didn't want them to think badly of their father. I wanted them to still have a good relationship with them if it was possible.
Yeah.
And I found out a couple years ago, actually, my oldest daughter, Tiana, she has cut ties with him.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that, one time when she visited him, he got mad at her because she was sick and didn't feel like doing anything. And he ended up actually like slamming her up against the wall. And then she looked at him and she was like, if you don't let go of me, I will tell mom and she will never let me see you again. And
Mm.
I guess, and then he stopped. But she did, she called me right away and she was like, come and get me now. And
Yeah.
I did. I went and I
Good
got
girl.
her. But she never told me what happened until like a couple years ago, because she said if she knew if she told me, I would never let her go back to him, and I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But now they're estranged now, and that was just, he was mean to her on,
Yeah.
on the phone and through text messages, and he just doesn't respect who she is, and he kept telling her, you're too much like your mom.
That's the thing, you see that it's him. It's not you and it's not her. It's him. That's just how he deals with things. When he can't control somebody, when he can't control a situation, he
Yeah.
makes you wrong and he shames you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you think, this is an obvious question, but I'm going to throw it to you anyway. Who do you think needs to hear this?
I think many women need to hear this,
And some men, P.S.
and men, yes, and read read your book, listen to stuff like that, realize they're not alone,
Yeah.
realize that this is a problem and that they're not the ones to blame, and get out of it
Yeah.
before you can't.
Yeah.
And so I would like to reach as many people as possible, but I really think my daughters need to know. um,
Absolutely.
my mom, I was talking to her about this on Saturday, that I was going to come on here and do this, and she was like, I don't even know your story.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I was ashamed. I
Yeah.
was ashamed to tell you about it. I was ashamed to tell Dad about it. um, and I mean, I don't really care if he hears it or not, or if he knows it. I really just don't care
Yeah.
anymore. And I
Yeah.
had to let go of that. I was very angry for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
at him, where it's like I wished death upon him, and I was very, very bitter and angry. And everybody kept telling me, you got to let go of that.
Yeah.
You got to forgive him, and you got to let go of that. And I feel like just recently I've done that.
Yeah.
uh, where he did what he did, and there was no controlling it, maybe on his part. I don't know why. Maybe he's got mental illness or something.
Yeah.
um, but it's not my fault, and I'm way better off now than he is, and so
Mhm.
karma kind of took care of it.
Yeah. It usually does. It usually does. Yeah, there's definitely part of me that fears that, you know, my ex is going to get a copy of this book, that he's going to find it and that he's going to try to make trouble for me.
Yeah.
I changed the spelling of his name slightly, but it's not. I didn't go too far because it was like anyone can easily look up the records to find out who this is, right?
Right.
Um, and so it was a hard decision for me, and that's part of why it took me 20 years to publish this book.
Yeah.
Um, but the bottom line is, I figured, well, it's true. Everything I said was true. I'm sure he doesn't remember it that way.
Well, then he can write his own memoir.
Exactly. So he can tell his side of the story if he wants to, but
Right.
yeah. I
Right.
don't think it makes me look good, very good either. It's not like I made myself look wonderful and him look like a monster. It was like, oh.
No. But reading it and knowing you in high school, and knowing the person that you were, and this is what I've been told, the same thing. But it's hard to believe that you let your, that you let yourself get in that situation.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's what my husband right now tells me, because him and I dated when I was in 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you probably know.
Uh-huh. I'm
uh,
aware.
but I never got over him, ever. Like,
Yeah.
I always loved him, always, always
Mm-hmm.
loved him. And it just so happened, that when I was getting divorced, he was getting divorced, and
Mm-hmm.
we started talking. But he tells me, he was like, the person that you were when I knew you in high school, he was like, I could never think that person would end up in an abusive relationship. You were so headstrong. You had everything going for you. You were an intelligent. You had personality coming out your ears. He was like, I just can't believe that you let somebody dominate you like that. And
But
yeah,
that's just it. Anyone can end up in a situation like that.
right.
Anyone.
Anyone can.
And it's this myth that, oh, it's like the shy, mousy, like timid women that end up, getting dominated. No, no.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen to anyone. And the only common thread is that we have some kind of shame that they can hook into, and that
Mm-hmm.
we're kind people who want to help other people,
Yeah.
and they convince us that we can fix them or we can help them, and that it is our responsibility to do so, to stay and help them get better.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only real common thread. And so anyone who's out there listening right now who is in an abusive situation or has been in an abusive situation, I just want you to hear that loud and clear. This is not about you. It's not
Yeah.
about you. It's about patterns that probably go back generations. Probably go back generations.
And you can't change him.
And you can't change him. You
Or
cannot.
or
Even if he
her
wants
or
you, yeah,
that
even if they
person.
want you to change them, you
Yeah.
can't. It
You
is
can't.
impossible.
They have to want to be different.
That's right.
And
And
it, yeah.
if someone comes to you and says, hey, I know I have this problem, I'm working on it. Here are all the ways that I'm working on it. Here's a way that you could help me work on it. That is a different situation.
Totally. Yes.
When someone is only partially aware of the pattern,
Mm-hmm.
even if they say to you, hey, I need help, can you help me? No, you can't. You
No.
can't. That is theirs to work out. And
And the,
PS, they can't fix your problems either. I mean, this was a big thing for me too, was I realized that, looking back, that part of the reason I got into this situation was that I felt out of control. I was, acting out in a lot of different ways in my life and was not respecting myself. And so I wanted someone to come and take over control of my
yeah.
life. I wanted them to take the wheel.
Yeah.
And I learned pretty quickly that, oh, that doesn't work either. You
Yeah.
can't actually hand over your boundaries to somebody else and say, hey, keep these safe. It doesn't work like that. Then they're not your
Yeah.
boundaries anymore.
Yeah.
So, for better or worse, you are forced to be free.
Yeah. And I think both you and I have a common thing too, where it's like, we're not going to let someone else, you kind of do something just to prove that you can.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, when I got in that unfortunate situation and everyone was like, oh, young marriage doesn't, a lot of times it doesn't work out. And, your parents were divorced, your grandparents were divorced, you'll probably end up divorced. I was like, nope, I'm going to
Nope.
prove it.
Digging in.
I am going to prove it. I am going to get married at this age. I'm going to have my child. I am going to do this, and I am not going to get divorced.
Yeah.
And, you do it because you want to prove everyone else wrong.
That's right.
And
yeah. Oh, cross-cultural relationships are hard. Oh, yeah? Well, watch this.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it too is that, just like you said, it's like whenever someone tells you you're wrong or, it's not going to work, like you double down. You double down. And so this is why whenever someone tells me, that they're in a situation and they're not sure if it's abusive or not or whatever it is, your automatic response is to kind of go, well, of course it is, and you should get out of that, and they're bad and they're hurting you, and don't you see that? But that often is exactly the wrong thing to do, because that is
Right.
what makes them double down and dig in and go, no, 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 and starts defending them and
Yes.
finding reasons why they should stay. And so whenever I see a situation like that, I just work on, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want? Let's try to make your boundaries important. Let's try to make your self-love and your self-worth important here.
Yeah.
How can we find ways for you to get more of what you want in your life? And eventually they will learn that being in this relationship and being the person they want to be are incompatible, but that is not for me to decide.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think, I didn't get to the point where I could get out of that relationship until I started to love myself and
Yep.
realize that I had self-worth and realize that, I was a good person and that I had something to offer and that I didn't deserve what was being done to me. And I didn't deserve the treatment I was getting. And it took a long time to feel that way. And some people might say that, you're selfish for thinking that way, but because I learned quickly after that relationship, I know when I'm in something that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm in another, because I've had other relationships and I realized pretty quickly that, no, this isn't what I want. This isn't going to work out. This isn't what I want for my life. And I'm never going to stay in something I don't want to be in again.
Yeah.
And so I learned that it's still okay. It's okay to be like, I know we moved in together, or even, getting married again, and realizing that, hey, this this isn't right. We were better friends than we were a couple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just realized that early on, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life without that fiery, passionate love, that everybody talks about, that you see on movies. I
Oh
wanted that.
yeah. Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But the thing is, you can have both. You
Oh,
can
now I have it.
exactly. So do I. But
I know. That's the other thing
you
I
have
saw.
to, yeah, you have to believe it's possible. You have to believe it's
Yeah.
possible that you can have that fire and that passion and be respected and
Yes.
treated like a human. You can have
Yeah.
both. Absolutely. But it's hard. I totally get that feeling of you have to love yourself first. And that feels so cheesy. And it feels
Yeah.
so corny to even say that. Like, oh, I have to love myself first. Obviously, duh.
Yeah.
But love is an active verb.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a feeling. It's not a thing you fall into and stumble out of. Okay. It's a thing that you actively create. And you have to create that love for yourself. And that
Yeah.
requires spending quality time with yourself. It requires getting to know yourself. And the thing
Yes.
is, the question of deserving that comes up a lot. It's like, well, did I deserve this treatment or didn't I? You know what? It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. We don't always get what we deserve in life, right? Some people get cancer for no fucking reason. Some people deserve, to go to jail and never do. Uh, it's a crazy wacky world, right? The bottom line is you can always have self-compassion and you can always forgive yourself because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody
Yep.
makes stupid choices. And if you didn't, then like smell you, Nancy Drew, but like you probably had a pretty boring life.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You got to realize that you also got to give yourself what you need, and,
Yeah,
do what, and maybe everyone else doesn't think it's right, but if it's what you need to do and it's what you want, then you need to do it.
that's right. Nobody else gets a vote. And
No.
let people call you selfish. Let people call you a jerk. Whatever. This is the bottom line. When you are ready to leave, and you'll know when you're like, okay, I'm ready, be prepared that the person you're leaving and a lot of other people are going to think you're a bad person. They're
Mhm.
gonna.
Oh yeah.
They're gonna call you every name in the book and they're gonna make you feel guilty. They're gonna try to make you feel guilty, but the only one who can make you feel guilty is you. And you do not have to accept that. And you can just decide, hey, that's their opinion. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. Just like my 1-star reviewer, man, you are entitled to your opinion.
That's
Welcome
right.
to it, right? Nobody has to love me. It is not required. But the bottom line is you have to love you and you have to live with you and they don't. So you
That's,
got to make choices that are right for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the last question I always ask, what is the main message or takeaway from this story?
The main message is like we've been talking about, love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Above all else, you need to love yourself. And I mean, the old saying is true, and it's a saying for a reason, but you can't love somebody else until you love yourself.
Yeah.
And if it's before that, then it's lust, or it's the idea of them, or it's the idea of love, or it's the idea of marriage, or whatever you're talking about.
Yeah. It's the
Um,
fantasy.
it's the fantasy that you're in love with.
Yeah.
But really, it takes a long time, I feel like. And I feel like when we're young and we're idealistic, you're like, oh, I'm good, but it really takes a while. And then when you look back, you're like, you know what? I do love myself, and I don't care what anyone else says about me. I don't care what lies my ex might say about me, what he told his friends happened between us, what he told his mom or his family or any of that. I don't care,
Yeah.
because I know my side, I know my truth, and that's all that matters. And I think that's the main thing, that you have to love yourself, and you have to forgive those people who have done wrong to you, because like you said, it doesn't, life doesn't happen to you.
It happens for you.
It happens for you. And I love that. I do, I love that saying, because it is so true. Because you are always in control, you can always change something. No one is ever stuck in any situation. You can always change it.
Yeah. No matter how far you've gone down the wrong road, turn
Exactly.
back.
It doesn't matter. You could be walking down the aisle and then you can change your mind.
That's right. That's right. Kind of wish I had.
Okay. I know, me too. Me too. It's still okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank
No,
you.
thank you for sharing your story too. I mean, it's really like I said, made me want to share as well.
And that's why I told it. So
Yeah.
thank you. It was perfect timing to have
Mhm.
this today. So, is there anything else the audience needs to know? Is there a place that they can find you if they want to continue this conversation with you?
They could find me on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It's Janine Purdy Salmon.
Mm-hmm.
And they could hit me up on Messenger or just anything like that. Also on Instagram, I think under the same name. So that's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would always be willing, to talk about this more. It's
Thank you.
important.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks for being here.